go back and start with this.
Yeah, I am really sorry to have you do that again, but I think this will come out a better listening experience for sure. So if you could take me back once again to Dundee.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. So, so I grew up in Dundee, and about 13 or 14 years of age, went up to my grandmother's house in Huntly, in Aberdeenshire, Scotland, and it was her birthday. I'm pretty sure it was my grandmother, might be my grandfather, I'm not sure. But anyway, a distant cousin came and played pipes very briefly there. I'm sure played Happy Birthday in Scotland the Brave and maybe a jig or two or something. And I said to my dad, I got to play this. That is awesome. I got to do that. And on the way back home, which is maybe an hour and a half, I asked my dad lots of questions about it. And my dad said that he actually used to play pipes a fair bit, and I'd had to give up because of work.
And had you never known that?
Yeah, I had no clue. So the pipes had obviously been underneath the bed or in a closet or something. Yeah. But I think he'd stopped for like 17, 18 years. And then, so he said, I'll get a practice chanter, I'll get my hands going, and I'll get you a practice chanter, and we'll start together. And he taught me the basics and got me running. And from then, I just kind of was mad keen, and I joined the 6th, 8th Boys Brigade in Dundee, and they had a pipe band under Pipe Major Marr, and I enjoyed the band and loved the Boys Brigade, and I'm still in contact with quite a few guys through Facebook from the Boys Brigade days then.
Is the Boys Brigade something like what I would think of if I think of the Boy Scouts here in the U.S.?
Yeah, kind of loosely, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, loosely based, yeah.
But it wasn't exclusively a pipe band. That was like just part of what they did.
Correct. That was like one of the clubs that you could kind of get involved with in the band. So that 6th, 8th Boys Brigade was like two companies. I think there'd been two churches that had kind of amalgamated, and they were then the 6th and the 8th Boys Brigade together. So we had a decent pipe band there, and it was a lot of fun. And a couple of the guys went on and joined the Royal Scots Dragoons from that band, and I obviously went on and kept playing, and had a great time there.
Now you mentioned that it was a distant cousin that came and played for your grandmother's birthday, and then and then your dad mentioned that he had played, you just hadn't been aware of it because he had to drop it for work. As a very not well traveled American piper myself, what I'm used to is like, if I run into another piper, it's about as likely as two mosquitoes crashing into each other in the Grand Canyon. It's just not super common. And so I have this, like, I'm not sure if it's accurate that I imagine that Scotland's got to just be so full of pipers that you throw a rock, you're going to knock somebody's bass drone over. But that's not the case. Like, if you had this distant cousin who played, but you didn't know anybody else in your immediate circle who was playing?
No, not at the time. I mean, not at the time at all. I mean, it was the whole piping world is, it's fairly big around the world, but really locally we kind of keep to ourselves, and
Sure, yeah.
We kind of keep in our own circles and always have, kind of thing. So
gotcha.
Once you're in. There's a whole bunch of people, but
that's the truth. Yeah.
If you're not inside it, I dare say it's not immediately evident everywhere, So
you'd made it to your teenage years without really being, albeit in Scotland, just not super duper exposed to a whole lot of piping. So that when you did encounter it with your distant cousin playing, it was like, oh, hey, I want to do that.
Oh yeah, and the funny thing was back then, I'm sure somebody will tell me I'm wrong in saying this, but my impression of it back then was. I was taken up, I think, at the age of 13, and some of the big teachers back then would have said, "Well, that's way too late. Sorry, don't bother."
Missed the boat, huh?
Right. So obviously, I kind of went gangbusters at it and worked as hard as possible as I could.
Yeah.
And then I was very, very lucky. My dad was very patient with this headstrong teenager.
Yeah.
And I also got tuition, I think it was once a week, from pipe major Ian Duncan, who at the time was the pipe major of the ScotRail Vale of Atholl, who were one of the best bands in the world at the time.
Wait, Vale of Atholl?
Right.
That's the band Gordon Duncan played with, yeah?
Correct. And he was teaching around all the schools in Dundee at the time. And so he would teach a couple of students here and then drive to another school and a couple of students and whatever.
Oh, I see.
And so I was lucky enough to get lessons from him. And he really put me on the path to getting everything correct and, 100% and opening my eyes to playing correctly and on the beat and phrasing and really getting it down right. And I took it to heart and really worked very hard. And after a year or two with lessons with him, eventually I was allowed to join the Vale of Atholl. Oh,
I didn't realize you'd played with them. That's awesome.
Right, so I played with Gordon Duncan and Ian Duncan in the Vale of Atholl for about 4.5 years.
You were already a pretty big deal in my mind, Adrian. You're only becoming a bigger deal as we speak here.
Well, it was fun times back then. The piping was great. I mean, I was very, very fortunate in all the turns of my life, I must say. But the Vale was, I was lucky to be with them at the time I was, because they were a terrific band. And actually, the very first contest I played at was the European Championships at Glenrothes. And I remember the night before, I'll probably get in trouble for this, but the night before, we really did not sound good. And Ian was not happy because the weeks leading up to that, we were sounding pretty damn good. And then it just didn't sound very good the night before. And then the next day at the European Championships, we sounded terrific. Played MSR was Links of Forth, Atholl Comers, and I think the Smith of Chili Chassis. And we beat Strathclyde Police that day, and we were European champions. And that was my first contest with the Vale, so that was quite the entry to Grade 1 for a young kid.
And I mean, did Ian say anything afterward? Like, I didn't think we were going to make it, but y'all pulled it together. Good job. Or was
no. I mean, on the day, obviously, Ian had a lot of help and great players in the band, and he had a lot of knowledge, and he was very calm under pressure and knew not to do anything crazy.
Yeah,
bit like baseball, some of the best managers are the ones that just know just to kind of not panic and just kind of keep their head and just kind of wait for things to turn around.
He wasn't the kind who was going to come into the locker room and kick the cooler of Gatorade over and yell at you or anything.
No. He was a very very thoughtful and very a great leader of the band.
And when you got started on the pipes, did your dad still have his old set? Were you playing on his old set?
So a great friend of my father was Bert Barron, who they'd met when they played as students in the what do you call it? The college kind of OTC, which is like Territorial Army or kind of.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Kind of paid army kind of thing for students kind of thing. And my dad was with Aberdeen, and I think Bert was with Stirling, he was with St Andrews OTC at the time. And Bert ended up being a very, very well-known collector of bagpipes and dealer of vintage bagpipes in Scotland, and he was over in St Andrews. And my dad got me a set of old Laurie bagpipes, nickel and ivory to play at the time. And my dad had a beautiful set of silver and ivory Hendersons from about 1900.
From 1900, wow.
Yeah, something like that. They were quite a fantastic set of pipes.
Yeah.
And eventually I played them, but early on I was playing a set of Laurie pipes. So that's what we were both kind of getting up and running with,
Yeah. So how long were you playing with the Vale of Atholl?
About 4.5 years. And then I was getting to the point, when you're either going to college or you're deciding what your career path's going to be and whatever. And I had gone to Jakarta, Indonesia, or Singapore. I think it was Jakarta, with a quintet from the Vale of Atholl for a quintet competition down there. And when I was there, I met a whole bunch of the Victoria Police who had come up for this contest, and it was a fun trip. And I remember meeting them there and talking to them and being very impressed. And they were a full-time band at the time, and I eventually decided that's what I wanted to give a shot and give a go at. And I eventually got accepted by Pipe Major Nat Russell, who was in charge of the band. And I went down on the same plane as Paul Turner, who had been the lead drummer at the Vale of Atholl, I think the year before or so, and then he'd left the Vale just a wee while before that. So we ended up both travelling down in July or the end of June, and then we were back up for the World Championships that year, like 5 or 6 weeks later, to play with the band. So,
what year was this?
91, I think.
91, huh?
Yeah, 91, I think.
Did you ever go back to Jakarta? With bagpipes or otherwise?
I've stopped off on the way back from Australia, going back to Australia a couple times,
that
I
makes
think.
Sense, yeah.
I think I did go back another time with the Vale or with the No, I went back with the Victoria Police, I think. A year or two later after that, I think. So,
oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, crazy place there. When it rains, it's like super hot, and when it rains, it thumps.
Oh, really?
You're getting knocked over by the rain droplets there.
So the rain picks up more water on its way down, huh?
Oh, it's crazy. It's a crazy place. So
then, playing with Victoria Police as of 91, does that mean you're moving to Australia full time, or are you traveling back and forth?
Yeah, no, I lived in the Melbourne area. So the state is the state of Victoria, which is in the bottom right hand corner of Australia. And so I was I guess you could say a musical bandsman for the Victoria Police. And it was a full-time pipe band, a full-time brass band, and a full-time rock band.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
that's how they were able to pull together so many amazing so many amazing pieces that included more than just pipes, huh? They had, had everything there. Right,
and we also had people in the band like Murray Blair and Mark Saul and Brian Niven, and I think a couple others that played other instruments like guitar and other things.
You good friends with Murray Blair?
Yeah. We, myself, Murray, Mark Saul, and Neil Lyons. When I moved down, and I think Dean Hall actually, we all shared a house at the time in Melbourne. Yeah.
Has he sent you any hey, since you're my buddy, here's a Blair chanter for you?
No.
Those things are cool, man. I'm gonna get one of those someday.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cool with St. Lawrence O'Toole playing them.
Yeah,
it kind of comes across really well. So it's pretty crazy,
So
how
long were you playing with Victoria Police? Were you there in '98 for Master Blasters?
Yes, I was, but I'd actually had 2 stints with them because halfway through I got, as a lot of people do moving to Australia, I got homesick. So I moved back home, and I for about a year I was a policeman with the Strathclyde Police. So I went through the whole training and became a policeman with the Strathclyde Police.
And did they have a pipe band too?
Oh yeah, I mean Strathclyde Police is one of the most winning pipe bands in history.
Well then, shame on me for not.
That's okay. So it was I was lucky to play with them for one season too, while I was doing like normal shift stuff.
Yeah, you get there and you're like, well, I guess as long as I'm here, I guess I'll play with you.
No, so it was quite eye-opening, but unfortunately I was unlucky at the time that the government slashed the salary, I think, by a third.
Oh, wow.
Which was ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, all at
crazy.
Once, that's terrible.
And then it would you just couldn't, you couldn't pay all your bills and everything.
Yeah, you can't keep an apartment when you...
Yeah, so eventually they kind of stopped that, but it was a death knell for me, so I moved back to Australia, and I was very fortunate that Nat took me back in the band, and I think 2 seasons after that we did the Master Blasters, played the live concert. That was 98. Mm-hmm. So we did the CD that June, I think it was, and then we played the Worlds concert 2 nights before the Worlds in Motherwell, and then we played the Worlds and we won the Worlds, and so that was a phenomenal season to be around with the band.
Yeah. Did you ever play Hellbound Train with that band?
Yeah. I used to be one of the 4. I used to sometimes play the initial piece of the Hellbound Train, and the whole band joins in, kind of thing, you know.
That's awesome. That tune, as I'm sure is the case for a lot of people, that tune is still very special to me. But as a teenager learning how to play, I mean, that was the holy grail, you know. That was the first thing Zach and another buddy and I, the first time that we ever sort of took the initiative to be like, we're going to learn our own thing, something that the band isn't handing to us, you know. It was Hellbound Train. Like, we've got to figure this one out. This one's amazing. Right.
I mean, that's one thing that the band was amazingly fortunate with. Well, I would say that the band was very fortunate in a lot of different ways. And Pipe Major Nat Russell was a smart enough man that he knew he couldn't do everything, and he got together a very good team of people in all different ways. You know, so people with different strengths, and so we had a very good tuning team, which was mainly Robert Crozier and Ross Bates, and then Alan Leggett and Dave McNamara tuning the drones. So Robert and Ross tuned the chanters, and they were very, very good at that. So we had a great sound because of them and their very systematic approach. And we also had the latest technology of the Ross bags and Ross drone reeds and all that new systems. And then with the music, with Murray Blair and Mark Saul writing all this kind of new cutting edge music, it was just, you know, I guess a perfect storm, really, because that was, you know, the music they came up with was just flowing out of their veins. You know, it was just crazy what they were coming up with, great stuff. You know, so.
Yeah, and you know, I might be seeing this entirely through like sort of the lens of my own personal experience, but I feel like it wouldn't be too much of a stretch for me to say that, like, it seems to me like a lot of the amazing stuff that you see happening with like Lincoln Hilton stuff and some of the stuff that like Ross Ainsley and some of these other folks are doing, I feel like, you know, I don't have any data to support this, but I feel like if it hadn't been for Victoria Police, like, would these ideas even be floating in the air for people to grab and then keep running with, you know, and come up with some of this more of this cool new stuff?
Well, I think it all helps. I mean, back in that day, I mean, like Murray and Mark and a lot of other players really, really loved everything that Gordon Duncan had done previously.
Of course, yeah. So,
or Gordon Walker. Gordon Walker at the time was coming up with some great arrangements of different things, and I'm trying to think of some other players at the time. But there was different players coming in, and also, for instance, I do remember that we loved a recording by Toronto and District Pipe Band under Pipe Major John Elliott. I think it was called Reflections, and it was a great CD, which I'm not sure loads of people heard, but it was like very cutting edge. It had music by Perry Gautier and some other people, and the stuff they had on that CD was great, and we loved that music too. And then we also had like different music we were listening to from all different I guess Celtic folk bands and folk rock bands, and so it was very much a kind of mixing pot of different things, much like I think it kind of happened to the 78 Frasers when Bill Livingston and that was all kind of coming about in the early days. So.
Oh, that's very cool. And you say that it was while you were there in Australia that you first started learning some reed making.
Right. So I was taught by Bill Travail about reed making, and he was very, very, very smart man, and he was made up all the tooling himself, and it was quite an education. And the big thing about reed making is, I remember a dear friend who was around there called Sandy Hain, who was Scottish. He was an old reed maker from Cleveland, Ohio, and he said, we made maybe 2,000 reeds. You're starting just give it then by, you know, thinking, 2,000 reeds, that took me ages, and probably being nice, probably 2,400, a lot to get around to it. So yeah.
How do you think it took 3,000 or 4,000 reeds made?
Oh, I have no clue because it was some dry spells in between. I was with obviously the competing and playing some solos and so yeah.
So did he teach you chanter reed making specifically, or did you, as of that point, also start looking into sort of delving into tinkering with drone reeds as well?
Oh, he just taught me reeds.
Yeah.
So it was Sandy Hayne and his brother Bob Hayne, who's still alive in Scotland, and he actually makes a lot of drone reeds, cane drone reeds, and practice chanter reeds and pipe chanter reeds in Scotland. And he still makes some tooling in different machines in Scotland. Bob Hayne's his name, and he maybe the tooling for doing it, and then taught me how to make the cane drone reeds, and then Sandy helped me a little bit too as well. So
yeah,
so it was mainly the Hayne brothers.
Now, I don't mean to hop around chronologically, but I'm curious, with your reed making, have you always wanted to wrap them in blue string, or is that
Well, I mean, when I first started doing it, I mean, everybody was making them in black.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. I mean, I'd helped a little bit in sales of reeds and bagpipes and all different things in the British shop for a short time. And I realised that a lot of players really do not know what they're playing.
So
they just see this
so true.
black reed.
Myself as well.
So I kind of thought, oh, well, if I'm going to do this, I better try and make it a bit more distinctive.
Yeah.
So that, at the worst case, people can say I like the blue reed. In saying that, I didn't know that Dougie Murray, who's a reed maker in Scotland and pipe major of Fife Police, he at probably the exact same time was starting to make reeds too, and he was making them in blue.
Yeah.
So we both had no clue that we were both starting off with the colour blue. So
yeah,
kind of funny.
Yeah, it seems like now, as of fairly recently, you're starting to see more and more reed makers that use a stamp on the blades or a different color string or something. But I feel like, at least in my personal experience, yours was the first time I ever saw a reed that wasn't your standard, 2 chunks of wood and a wrap of black.
Right. Well, actually, I mean, I'll also say that I had seen something prior to that, which you might not have seen much in the US, was Jeff Ross, who made the pipe bags and the drone reeds. He used to make pipe chanter reeds, but he gave up on that and concentrated on the bags and the drone reeds. And his reed at the time was in navy thread on the body and bright red at the bottom.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it was quite a striking reed to look at. So I guess that probably gave me part of the idea. I think so too.
So from Victoria Police, how do you end up in the Midwest of the United States? Where'd you go after that?
So we won the World Championships, and then the next that end of the year or so, it was immediately obvious that we weren't really going to be continuing as the band competing anymore. And so there was going to be a lot of changes in the band from then on. It didn't seem like there was going to be any competitions. And I was very competition orientated. So I'd had an offer from a friend of mine, Jake Watson, in the 7/8 Frasers, to come across there and make reeds together and all that stuff and play in the band. So I took him up on the offer and moved to Canada. Didn't quite work out. Played with the 7/8 Frasers for a season. Had a brilliant time. Ended up moving to the States and moved to the Chicago area eventually. And started teaching pipes there, and then eventually started making reeds on the side kind of thing, and eventually transitioned over to reed making full time, maybe 3 years, 3 years ago, full time, I think. So I used to do a lot of teaching of pipers, and then I eventually got away from that and moved into the reed making full time.
When you got to Chicago, when you were teaching and all, was that just entirely yourself? Or did you find like a Celtic center where you could go and teach part time or something like that?
No, I taught a lot of single students, and then a couple of bands as well. So I would go to their band practices like once every 2 weeks or so, and then teach a bunch of students at a couple of different venues. For people that could make it during the daytime, and then some people that could only make it in the evenings and that. So just made it work,
Yeah, well, and I mean, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but you're a good teacher. I know we've had you at least once. I'm thinking twice, though. We've had you out to judge at Payson, and you did a
I think I've been out twice.
Afterward. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was in June or July, right?
That's right. Yeah, and we did a workshop on Sunday after at the high school.
Right. Yeah. That's Dan's high school, right?
That's right. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and they're always good workshops, so I don't doubt you did well teaching.
Thank you.
Are you doing any of that at present, or are you just 100% on your reads?
I mean, obviously, in the last year or so with the pandemic, it's been basically on lockdown, kind of staying at home and not really having contact with people at all. I don't really do the workshop stuff anymore. I mean, I dare say I'll probably end up doing it again a little bit, just depends what opportunities come your way,
Sure.
There's a lot more people out there teaching full time nowadays, so it's I think there's an embarrassment and riches for a lot of people to choose from for instructors nowadays. So yeah.
What about judging? At what point in your journey did you start judging for competitions?
Well, I became a accredited judge in Australia. Nat Russell, pipe major Nat Russell, was very forthright and wanted to get a lot of people from our band at the time, the Victoria Police, to get accredited and become judges.
Yeah, I don't doubt you were qualified, but I was going to jokingly ask, like, was that an honorary title they just gave to all members of Victoria Police at the time, just because the band was doing so well?
No. You had to do like RSPBA, certificates, and also their version of basically the same kind of thing was done by the Australian Pipe Band College. Mm-hmm. So I got my certificates basically through that, and then moving to North America, I could join over here and become a judge over here too.
Yeah, and
I've done obviously a certain continuing education and other certification over here since then.
Mm-hmm. So you've hopped over a few different continents here. You've played your pipes in different places, and you've lived different places. Are you settled in Chicago, or are you?
Oh yeah. I'm not going anywhere now. I mean,
you haven't got the itch, huh?
No. I mean, it's all. I've had a very great life, and it's been great to visit and be in so many different places. But I'm definitely ensconced where I am. So I like the Chicago area. It's very central and everything, and I like North America. And so I'm looking forward to getting back into normal life, as everybody is.
Oh yeah, who isn't?
I actually had just joined up before the pandemic with the 7/8 Frasers again to play with them again.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of looking forward to playing with the band and seeing how we sound and play. Hopefully next year, I'm guessing it'll be, or maybe you never know. Maybe we get to play at some event or something late in this year or something. So we'll see.
Hoping.
So yeah.
Well, listen, I'm happy for you, and I wish you all the peace. But if you ever decide that you just really want some desert air and you want to move to Utah, I've got a pipe band that would accept you with open arms. So.
Thank you very much. It's a beautiful place, Utah. I had a great time when I came out.
Yeah, we'll at least get you out a few more times to judge or something.
The problem is it's so hot and dry.
That's true. And I wanted to ask you about that. As a guy who, not only has played his pipes in a lot of different places, but also is making reeds. I think it was the second time you came out here to Utah. I asked you, I was playing one of your reeds, and I walked up to you before you were gonna listen to me solo, and I was like, "Hey man, I don't know if you noticed that I've got this blue reed here in my chanter," as if it was gonna get me an extra point, But I did ask you. I asked you. I said, this was a. I don't remember if it was an easy medium or a medium reed. And I said, it plays kind of hard. And I asked you about that, and you said it was the elevation. To what degree is there any like hard and fast rule that you know about that like affects the way a chanter reed is going to behave when you go up in elevation or when the air gets real dry, versus sea level versus humidity?
I mean, I would say the two main things that really affect pipe chanter reeds are elevation and a dry climate.
Which we've got in extremes over here in Utah.
Correct. So it's quite challenging, and I've got to say hats off to everybody who do what they do. And when I was out in Utah, I was really quite impressed by a lot of people, how their bagpipes sounded so good in a climate like that where the humidity is so, what is it, like 12% outside or something?
Oh, that's a very humid day. Yeah.
Oh, really?
It'll get lower.
It was like crazy.
You get 12% and people go inside. They say, "Oh, I can't stand this. I'm going into the AC."
Oh my gosh. So anyway, it was quite impressive how people had adapted and were, making the best of it and all that stuff. And since then, I've realized, there's a lot of things with pipe chanters and reeds and bagpipes that, for instance, I'm involved in making some reeds that are going to get launched soon for a chanter for Roddy McClellan. Yeah. And he's behind that called the Elevation Chanter. Yes, and Joe Brady is also one of the other masterminds and people behind that enterprise. And I think it's a very good chanter, very great idea, which is develop a chanter for the US market, US climates and all that stuff, so that it's going to be lower pitched, so that for your drier climates and hotter climates, that when you play there, you can play and not, be super, super off the pitch scale because of your pitch climbing with the dry and the heat.
Oh yeah, I mean, sometimes our high G hole is a whole second hole. You have to carve it out so much after.
Right. So this new chanter is going to be lower pitched, and what we're trying to do is to have it. I'm pairing my reed with it to try and give Roddy the best I can for my reed. To match with this chanter, so there's no tape on the chanter basically as a good starting point, especially the top hand. So that way, once you can set it to a decent pitch where it's not too crazy high, but then the sun and the dryness will take you up to where you basically want to be, kind of thing, so you can kind of figure out when it's hot and dry roughly where you want to set the chanter, so you get the sound that's still robust and thick and giving you a good thick sound.
You can actually hear the top hand.
Right. And if you think about it, I mean, when any band goes from North America to Scotland, I mean, say you're playing at 485 hertz over here as a band, which is a nice bright pitch. If you leave your reeds in as they are and you go to Scotland and pick them up and start playing, it's way damper over there and a lot cooler.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, you're not playing at 485, you're playing at 478 or something.
Yeah, just right out of the box. You just already down
just completely flat. So when they develop chanters for that market, they have to kind of push the pitch up a bit because they want to get a brighter sound when it's cooler and damper, and quite often the weather isn't, brilliantly warm over there.
Right.
So that's a certain kind of climate
they're making.
Right, that's it. Right, that's a certain climate they're making the chanters for. But then we take the chanters over here, and we're nothing like that.
Right,
so
yeah, that same chanter. Now we pick that up over here, and now we're up at like 490.
Yeah, we're trying to coax it down in pitch. So anyway, the main thing about this elevation chanter from Roddy McClellan, and I'm going to launch soon this reed called the Elevation Reed, is that hopefully we can pair something that gives a lot of bands over here an easier chanter setup that will work for them over here in the warmer and drier climates, and hopefully some of the higher climates as well. So That's kind of the idea behind that, So it's kind of been fun trying to figure that out. And obviously, I'm still trying to learn more and more about the higher elevation. And I've still got some ideas about what to try to tweak reeds more and more to try and get that even better and better. So it's all in my head right now. All the little bits I'm going to keep on trying to get better and better for the elevation stuff, So.
Well, I'm nothing but excited for it. I mean, from the time I first heard about this elevation chanter, I was like, well, I have money. Give me one of those chanters. Like, I am so ready for this, man. And to hear that you're pairing a reed specifically to it, I can't wait. That's awesome. I mean, I've had the experience of buying a B flat chanter and plugging it in and playing and being like, whoa, this plays so well. Like, I can hear the top hand and it plays really in tune and stuff. And then I heard about the elevation chanter, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like, yeah, it's kind of like it's positioning the holes, it's setting everything set up kind of in between what my standard, like, I don't know, Warnock chanter is and this B flat chanter I have. It's like somewhere in the middle, and that's the reason the B flat chanter was working well for me is because it's supposed to pitch down. And
and so this would be, say, I mean, I've heard it being roughly 472 to about 480.
Yeah.
Depending on where you want to kind of set it up, kind of thing. And obviously your climate and temperatures and all that stuff of where you are. So I mean, it is quite adaptable, and I dare say the heat of summer you add a bit of heat and a bit of more dryness in the middle of summer. I dare say, if you're setting it up at 478, you might end up being about 481, 482, and you can probably be flatter than that if you want to be. And so I think it's going to work out well for a lot of players, a lot of bands, and I'm excited about hearing the results of a lot of bands getting to try these out when they get launched.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I saw that they were listed on your website as well as coming soon, those chanters. So
right.
That is exciting. On that note, I asked a few people, some folks who listen to the podcast, if they had any questions they wanted me to put to you, and one of them that came up was folks were just curious if you have a favorite chanter that you like hearing your own reeds in.
It's funny you say that. I mean, it's like if somebody said to me, "Well, what's your favorite food?" It's funny. I don't have a favorite food. I have a bunch of different foods I like a lot. Say a certain dish from Indian food and one dish from Italian and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I mean, I really like the Shepherd chanter. I really like this new elevation chanter. The Infinity chanter is very good. The McCallum Kale chanter is very good too.
Yeah.
But they're all a little bit slightly different. They're all slightly different pitches and slightly different tones to their sound. And I must admit, I think they're all very good. And I've also got an old nail I play with a silver sole on it from, must be 20 years old now, and it's been doctored by a carving knife by myself a lot in the past.
Got after it.
So it's definitely higher pitch than it used to be.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, there's I wouldn't say there's any single make of chanter. There's really quite a few. And for me, I have to try and make my reeds function well in a whole bunch of chanters. So that's been my primary function, is to try and make sure they do work well for people in all different chanters.
Yeah, when you're kind of setting your shop up, did you have a collection of different chanters and just kind of pop your own reed into each one and just kind of see how's it doing in this one, how's it do in a Warnock, how's it do in a Gibson, that kind of thing?
Right, you have to do that because you have to try and find the flaw early on. You have to try and find the flaws in what you're making, and why is it a flaw and what's causing it, and and so early on. I mean, now I've got a drawer here, and I must have, I don't know, 50, 55, 60 chanters in there.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy,
Wow.
And amazing amount of them are really good chanters. I mean, there's a lot of very smart people out there nowadays that are producing very good products.
Yeah. Well, and of course, I don't doubt it at all that you're genuine, and I agree with you as far as my experience can go. Of course, I probably have kind of put you in an impossible position to say, like, pick a chanter. Of course, you want your reed. Of course, your reed's working all the chanters. I'm not gonna tell anybody don't try.
It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, there's another chanter. Actually, now I think about it, it is doing really well for a lot of solo players over here and some bands. It's the Bruce Gandy chanter from McCallum.
Well, anything with Bruce Gandy's name on it ought to be doing well, right?
Right. he knows what he's doing too. So yeah.
Well, so kind of to the point of having to kind of try stuff out and see where the problems are. One other question that came in was how many reeds end up in the trash heap before you find one that's good to push to market? Like, do you go are there 10 trash reeds before you finally get the good one?
Well, so I would say early on in my reed making days, there was a lot of trash, obviously, as in any reed maker.
Sure.
Getting going. But I've gradually over time replaced all the jigs or setups or machinery on all the different processes for the reed making, and I'm always pushing for getting better and better overall consistency and quality of finish on every process. And I would say the last 2 years or so, I've really kind of stepped it up with improving the processes. And I would say if I make 100 reeds right now, I would say I probably trash about maybe 5 or 6.
Oh, that's
a
great ratio.
I think that's really pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I mean, like any reed maker, once you split the cane tubes, you kind of have an idea if it's a good piece of cane or you don't when you cut it into different pieces. And so like any reed maker, as you go through the early stages, you take a whole bunch and kind of chuck it in a box, and you got this box full of all this cane that you don't want to use. So I'm trying to be very selective as I go through all the processes, and before I actually finish off a reed blade or 2 reed blades that hopefully I've rejected all the bad pieces of cane before I get to that stage. So yeah, it really is pretty systematic now, where I'm pretty happy that the returns are really, really quite high of how many good reeds I'm getting.
Yeah, oh, that's good to hear. Do you by chance do any fly fishing?
No, I did as a young kid.
Yeah.
As a young kid, I went a couple of times fly fishing. Never quite got the knack of it.
I just suspect that you probably have all the equipment you need to tie some of the most amazing flies that anyone would ever have.
I've seen people do it, and it's you can definitely see the similarities. That's for sure, and it's pretty fiddly business, that.
Yeah. Now, as a reed maker, do you think that you personally get a little more triggered than most people would when you see someone doing something stupid with a reed?
Yes and no. I mean,
you spend some time kind of cringing when you go to a Scottish festival, like, oh no, don't pinch it.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I mean, I do remember. I don't remember who told me this early on, but I've heard this later on. I think it was attributed to Jack Lee. I didn't hear it from Jack initially, but somebody attributed this to Jack Lee, saying if you want to learn how to be good dealing with reeds, he basically said, look, it's going to cost you a little bit of money. You're going to buy a whole bunch of reeds, and you're going to trash some of them, just trying things out with them. And as you work through that, try and keep a knowledge of what's going on, what's happening, and what went wrong and what went right, why. And the more you kind of work with reeds instead of just staring at them and thinking you can't touch them, then the more you kind of will figure out what you can do with reeds or what you can't. And you'll become very sufficient to look after reeds and set them up far, far better yourself. And I think that's a great thing. And I did early on take a lot of reeds and try different things. I said, oh, that doesn't work. I kind of made it super flat, or it made it double tone on F or whatever. So yeah, I think you have to at some point take reeds and just kind of, cut the top off them with a razor, or scrape them in certain places, or try different things.
Maybe not on competition day, of course. But.
No, that's for sure, and definitely not your good reed.
But over the weekend, go at it with a Dremel or with a what do you call the stick you poke up inside of it with a
mandrel?
Mandrel.
Yeah, mandrel. Yeah.
Go at it with a mandrel or shave it down one side and then the other.
But I mean, if you look at some of the best players out there, I mean, for a lot of players will take a reed that isn't necessarily playing really easily and really perfectly straight away, because they know that the reed is going to loosen off once you play it in for a while. So it's going to get looser and it's going to be, not necessarily as good at staying in tune, etc. So a lot of top players will get a reed that isn't quite as loose as what a lot of people would think would be a perfect reed, or they'll kind of want to take a little bit of cane off in certain spots on a reed that's maybe a stronger reed. And then that becomes an absolute just singing reed, just because they kind of know what to do with it, So
is that kind of reed magic behind? I had one person ask me about the Roddy McLeod high A sound. If there's a way to achieve that, like how does Roddy McLeod do that with his high A?
So I've meant to have this conversation with Roddy many times.
Oh, really?
When I've seen him over in Scotland and stuff, because his bagpipe is definitely in my top 3 pipe sounds, and maybe top 2 pipe sounds that I've always loved and just thought was an amazing bagpipe.
Yeah, I mean, so because he's got skill to play it, but even beyond that, his instrument sounds amazing.
Right, and it's funny, and I could be wrong, but I do remember Roddy leading Scottish Power. Power of Scotland, I think they were called at the time, and they did something where they caught off all their drones just to play pipe chanters as a group. And I remember, I think Roddy kind of played like an excerpt of one of the tunes saying, okay, we're going to play this or like this. And his high A was completely clear. And I was like, what? That's not, what's going on?
Yeah.
And so I listened to them a couple more minutes, and then they stopped, and he took the corks out or whatever, tuned his drones up. And as soon as he put his bass drone on, all of a sudden, the Roddy McLeod famous high A is there.
Huh.
And it's funny, I've had this as well. When I used to play the Ross system, there was one time I actually accidentally got the tubes kind of mixed, kind of twisted slightly, and the bass drone tube was kind of twisted with the chanter tube, and all of a sudden I had this very harsh kind of rhythmic kind of high A. And I realised it's more to do with the bag vibrating with the frequency of the bass drone. Huh. So I think it's more to, and I could be wrong, I don't know enough about this, but I think it's more to do how the bass drone vibrates the bag. And I think the thicker bag you have, being a sheepskin, the more prone it is to passing the vibration onto the chanter.
Interesting. I never would have even thought to go that far.
Right. Huh. And I there's been times where since then I've had like a really great, vibrant, high, a bit like Roddy, but not as good as Roddy's, but like it. And I remember putting my bass drone off and it wouldn't be there. Nothing like it. Yeah. So I think it has something to do with that. So that's as best as I can venture my thoughts on that. But hey, if you can ever interview Roddy, maybe that's question number 1.
Yeah, for sure. That is question number 1. So, tell me if this rings true for you. But I had a friend the other day who was asking me about bagpipes. He's saying, maybe he wanted to learn and stuff. And I happen to know that this friend, since he was a teenager, has been really enthusiastic about rebuilding and racing diesel trucks. Mm-hmm. And what he loves about it, is that you get under the hood and the tiniest little tweak here, the tiniest little adjustment there, can make a difference on the track. And I told him that's how bagpipes are. You can't plan to reach a destination. There isn't one. You got to love this process of like, oh, what happens, with my reeds here, or what happens when I retie my bag this other way. These little things. It's a lifelong thing. Like nobody ever arrives. We're all journeying.
Well, exactly. And I think. I think one other question that loads of people ask is, well, okay, if I'm going to free up your reeds or do something to your reeds, what do I do? And now, after making reeds for a long time, I would have to say, I think what makes it not something that you can just say you do this to everybody's reeds. Is everybody's tooling setup or machining setup for the reeds is different from everybody else. So you might find that a certain tooling setup leaves maybe a half a thousandth thicker on the outer edges of the blades as compared to the middle of the sound box, or maybe the reverse is true with a different maker. So tiny differences of just how their machining finishes their blades and stuff with this is maybe where you just have to tiny scrape here and there, and all of a sudden, really makes it great.
Yeah.
But I have a machining setup that's maybe different from the other maker, and so maybe it's the reverse is true. Maybe you've got to, usually with my reeds, if they're a bit firmer or a bit tighter, I tend to give them a little bit of a scrape on, so the above the blue thread on the main reed is the sound box, and then the next bit above that I call the ramp. It's like a downhill section, and then the top bit is what I call like the tips or the tongue section. And I tend to just lightly scrape or sand on the left and right hand sides of the ramp section.
Not straight
just
across
a little.
No,
I leave the middle alone unless the reed is very, very tight on the top hand. I tend to kind of just give a little bit just out to the sides, and that tends to kind of just let the reed really vibrate, but doesn't take much. And that's why it's such a crazy business for reed makers, is the tolerances are very, very minute. Between a reed that's really vibrating well and one that's just a wee bit tight,
Yeah, and then you add into all of that as well that you're shipping your reeds all over the world, and so who knows how their environment.
Now you've got to get something that works, hopefully well in a damp environment and hopefully decent in a dry environment. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, when I was a teenager playing in the first pipe band I played with, I was told that if my reed was dying, if a reed was on the way out, I could wrap it in a moist paper towel, stick it in the fridge overnight, and it would give me another 2 weeks or something like that. And I know of no scientific explanation for what's happening there. Is that a real thing?
No. I mean, I could imagine back in the day because, nowadays you have all these different chanter caps and reed boxes that are, keep the moisture in there.
Right.
And when you tie a reed on, the two blades or pieces of cane that you tie together around a tube, you have to, if you did it dry, they would split. So you have to wet the cane so that it will allow itself to be bent and curved around the cane, and then it dries out and it forms that shape. But if you let that reed really dry out a fair bit, then a lot of reeds, the sides will open up and leak a little bit. And then because the reed is on, I don't know how to describe this, but the wrapping is going around the reed, circular. So the force is kind of circular.
Sure, yeah.
So if you were then to shrink those reed blades by really drying them out, then quite often reed blades will move aside from each other. So they kind of move sidewards. And that's because they've shrunk. So now with the force that's going sidewards or around being the thread, it pulls the reeds the blades apart because the pieces of cane have shrunk and they're still under pressure.
So then it's opening up.
And then you wet that. If you don't move it back into place, it probably won't ever be the same reed again because it won't kind of fall. It won't sit back and the two blades right on perfectly in alignment again. So there's a lot to be said for always trying to keep your reeds a little bit of moisture just to make sure the cane doesn't dry out or want to change shape because of that, So yeah, I dare say a little bit of moisture in those days would, especially where you are, it's drier, would make a big difference,
You're stressing me out, Adrian, because at the end of last year, I'd made a little bit of money off funerals and stuff like that. And so, I figured for taxes, I was going to buy all the supplies I would need for the next year while I had made some money, trying to keep sort of my bagpipe habit paying for itself,
Right.
And so I bought like a dozen reeds, maybe more. most of which were Melvin reeds. I do like your reeds. And I just have them in a box right now. I gotta get a humidifier in there. I've got like $200 worth of reeds that are just gonna dry out on me.
So yeah, I mean, if you have them in a little Ziploc bag, I mean, that kind of helps a lot too, because they're not really gonna be open to the environment. But I mean, it's worth doing it as an experiment sometimes. Is just to leave a reed out, and you just kind of blow through it, and you'll hear like a kind of buzzy, and then it goes beep, at the end. And then if you leave it for about 3 hours just out, say on the tabletop, and don't do anything, come back to it, it will be functioning way differently and way tighter, and won't work as well. But a little bit of moisture back to it, gently coaxing it back, not flooding it, will get it back to playing again.
Yeah. Yeah, and is that sort of your recommendation? The first thing a person should try if they've got a dying reed? That's another question that came in. Like, how do I save my dying reed?
Well, so for instance, I like if it was a dying reed. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can obviously add a little bit of moisture. Just say get like a paper kitchen towel, and just kind of lightly damp it and put the reed in there and cover it both sides and leave it in there for about 5 minutes, and then take it out of there, let it kind of sit and dry off a little bit, because the cane's very porous, so it'll pull in the moisture very quickly. So that'll help it a little bit, rehydrate a little bit. Also a reed mandrel, which opens up the inside of the staple or the tube that's inside of it, is very handy. I personally prefer the reed mandrels that you push and the ones that you don't twist. I don't, it's just me, but I don't like the ones that twist. I think they kind of go 0 to 100 too much. Whereas the ones that you just push through, like you can get one from Tartantown. I think that one is excellent because you can just push and it's changing the eye formation, all of it basically at the same time, just in very small increments as you push farther in.
Whereas it's got that kind of longer taper to it.
Yeah, it's got that shape as well to it. So you're just pushing it in. Whereas the ones you turn, they kind of twist for a little bit and then they kind of all of a sudden just give and flop right around in a circle, and it's. Now it's really open. Really
suddenly
open.
You've pushed it the width of that mandrel instead of the
right. Yeah, so it's I'm not. I mean, obviously, people have different ideas, and it works different ways for different people. But that's just kind of how I think of that. Yeah. And then also, I mean, there's a couple of things, and this is one I've never. This is one I heard from guys that used to be on the Army piping school at Edinburgh. And they said if you take a tiny, tiny bit just off the top corners of your reeds, just a tiny little kind of diagonal bit off the top corner of a reed that's weak, it will just kind of tighten up a little bit and make it just a little bit more playable for a couple of weeks or so,
That's funny because I take a tiny bit off the top corners of my reeds by accident all the time.
Right. Yes.
No wonder it's so hard to play my pipes.
Right.
Now, I don't think that the Surefire synthetic reed mafia is going to put a hit out on you no matter what you say, but I'm curious what you think of synthetic reeds and also alternative reed materials. Like, is there some other material that would do well instead of cane, but it's very expensive or very unwieldy? Or is there a future for synthetic reeds? Or is this just something that's going to always be on the side?
I mean, I'm sure that eventually somebody will devise something that's kind of decent in the synthetic reed market. I really haven't heard anything I think is worth it yet. I mean, obviously, knowing what I know from reed making, I think if you get any different material, the biggest thing you're going to notice about it is it won't look anything like the reeds we make. Because the propensities of the material will be vastly different. So that material might be stronger or something to get you a certain pitch and sound, but then it might be half the thickness of what a cane reed is. or maybe double the thickness, or maybe a lot wider, or you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, I know the one. I have one synthetic reed, and it looks like a baby practice chanter reed. Like it's very different in dimensions.
You're right. So I think the only way that'll ever really kind of work out will be somebody's a piper who has some reed making skills, but also through their normal day job has access to different materials, and being able to try all different materials with work tools that they have, and be able to trial that stuff out.
Yeah.
Because I don't think a reed maker would. None of us would have the money to be able to throw into it, because it would cost so much money trialing all different materials and all different ways, and take a lot of time. But I think
you need a government grant for that kind of research.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Get somebody at college to do it as a 4-year project or something.
Right.
But so I think it'll be a long time, because cane is not the easiest material for us to make reeds from.
Yeah.
But it gives us the best color of sound, or tone, and volume and everything. So it not being the ideal material to use, it gives us the best sound properties that we're looking for.
And when you're looking at the advice that you could share about like how to shave a reed, and also mandreling a reed, is it different for ridge cut reeds versus molded reeds, or is it all pretty much the same animal?
No. So if you have a molded reed has a lot more shallower kind of scoop going up the whole reed, and a lot smaller, not as tall a sound box. And so those ones, it's a very gradual change to the tips, and usually the tips of those reeds are a bit thicker than they will be if they're going to be for a ridge cut reed.
Gotcha.
So there's different propensities to it. So a lot of molded reeds, you kind of scrape or sand or whatever overall the whole reed more. Whereas I think more ridge cuts, you're more working on the top half of the reed.
Gotcha.
But in saying that, I mean, there's different ways to do different things.
Again, we should experiment, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like SFU, Simon Fraser University, themselves and some other bands have quite often taken a little bit of the thickness off the sound box only, and they've had a lot of great success with that.
Yeah.
So it just depends how you want to work your reeds. So I mean, what you can do is you can thin down the sound box of a heavy reed and maybe put a dental bridle on the reed, which kind of keeps the mouth a bit more closed.
Sure, yeah.
Makes it a bit easier to play, and you can have a very vibrant reed that way too. So there's a lot to be done with reeds after you get them. It's not just me making a good reed. It's what you do with the reed afterwards to get the best out of the reed can make a big difference too.
Yeah. Well, and maybe you've been very generous with your time, Adrian. I appreciate that. Maybe we kind of can fade out on something like that. But before I ask you this question, where should we direct people to see your work and to get your reeds? Is it just melvinreeds.com, or are there other places they should also be looking around?
Well, I mean, melvinreeds.com is obviously my website, and I have my reeds available in a lot of different shops around the world. I mean, I would say in North America, it's Henderson Imports, Bar One, Piper's Hut. I'm trying to think off the top of my head here. In Scotland, it's R.G. Hardy, Macallan Bagpipes. What else am I missing out here? Piper's Cave in New Jersey, I think it is, on the East Coast. Obviously, McClellan Bagpipes will have my reeds with the elevation. Chanter will be
I can't
working
wait for
that one.
Man. I'm excited about that.
So if people are interested in the elevation chanters and my reeds, if they can contact me once it launches, that would be great. Or Roddy McClellan, and I can help them out from there.
Yeah, expect an email from me right away, man.
Thanks, man. But there's quite a few shops.
Lone Star Piper.
Town.
I just looked up.
Yep,
you're on there.
Right, and so there's a lot of good shops around the world that stock the reeds. So sorry if I've forgotten anybody. It's just off the top of my head.
Yeah, sure. No pressure. I'm sure it's understood.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then maybe we can. A beautiful fade out would be if I just ask you, Adrian. A person buys one of your reeds. The package arrives. They open up the package. What should they do with it?
I would say get some paper kitchen towel, and just like a spritzer bottle, like a little wee misting thing. Yeah. Just a little bit of water in there, and just kind of lightly mist the paper. And I would just kind of put the reeds on there. Put the top piece of the kitchen towel over the top as well, just for a couple of minutes, and then just let them sit for a couple of minutes, and then after that, once they've sat for a couple of minutes with it back open again, then you could start giving them a wee test in the chanter. And don't be afraid just to give them a little bit of a flex, because no matter what I do or any reed maker does, once it leaves here, you got to remember the reed's under pressure because it's around a tube.
Yeah. And
every piece of cane is different. So some pieces of cane will be great reeds and they'll stay exactly as the mouth opening was made and wants to be. And then some pieces of cane aren't a bad piece of cane. They're maybe just a bit more rigid and really have a great sound to them. But when they haven't been played or manipulated yet, they might open up a little bit and have a wider mouth. And so don't be afraid just to give it a couple of squeezes and just see if the mouth kind of starts to kind of close up and kind of, if you start looking at all the mouths of all the reeds, you'll kind of get an idea of how it looks when it looks like a good reed, how the width should be. And quite often if you get the width just right, it'll be a cut, the inside would be I have to measure it, but it'd be like a millimeter or two open. Then the scale and everything else will play quite well for that reed. But if the mouth is too open, it's going to be out of balance. It's going to be rough and it's going to be hard to blow.
Yeah.
Whereas a couple of squeezes, it'll probably kind of come back to what it should be. And I would just say, don't be afraid just to coax the reed gently over a couple of days. And I would say, as I was always taught, don't expect the reed to sound absolutely wonderful 100% on the first day. Because if it does, it probably won't last and it's going to loosen off and it's going to get worse. Whereas if you pick a reed that's just a wee tweak stronger than you like and keep on giving it a little bit of squeeze in and a little bit of playing in and loosening it off, it'll probably end up becoming just perfect for you.
Yeah.
So no matter what you do, you're always going to have to try and coax a reed over a bunch of days to become exactly what you want it to be. And then also the last thing is, about 1 or 2 days after you start playing a new reed and you got it in the pipes, be prepared that you might pick it up the next day and a bit of the moisture's got to the reed and it might be a little bit flatter that day. And again, just kind of play it, and don't panic. And it's just some of the moisture getting more inside the cane, and you can just kind of keep playing it, reset it, and it'll settle down.
Beautiful.
All right.
And that's good to know.